Hey guys, Rob, Sigma 3 Survival School. I want to do a little bit different skill set today. We're not going to be talking about wilderness survival, but we're going to be talking about how to build kind of a, cheap ghillie suit that you can throw together for not very much money. All we need is a set of BDUs, some paracord, and a little bit of shoe goo, and either some burlap sacks or some jute. And this has got just a whole range of different uses, whether it be for hunting purposes or tactical purposes. Doesn't really matter what your choice of use is. It will help conceal you in the woods and help you disappear quickly. So we're out doing a stalking, camo, and fieldcraft course today, so I'm going to take you through the process of some of our students building the suit from beginning to end. It's probably not going to be like a perfect suit, it's the first time these guys have built one, but at the same time you're going to get a lot of training value out of this, and this is something that you can take to your house and build yourself one for whatever uses you might have. Alright, so the first step in the process when building this ghillie suit is to take a little bit of paracord, and you're going to cut a length of it that starts right about here, right above your wrist, and is going to kind of transition along the line. You basically want it to follow kind of the outside area, because you're going to basically be covering all the top exposed portions of your back, your arms, things like that. And when you put the grid pattern over it, the jute or whatever you decide to use is going to lay over it. When you lay down, you should disappear. So the first line is to make, right along the neckline and have it just kind of transition up with one piece of paracord from one end all the way to the other. And you want to shoe glue it about every 2 inches. I prefer a little bit wider pattern. A lot of guys like a tighter pattern, but the problem with the tight pattern is it makes it more difficult to get veg in. You can get more veg in, but you're going to spend twice as much time, and in my mind this is a lot more or a lot easier to do in the field. So about every 2.5 inches is a good space. And then we're going to stack 3 rows of this all the way across, and then once we get the rows in, then we're going to start our vertical runs. Alright, so what we're going to do after you get your top rung all the way across with one continuous piece is you're going to start creating your grid pattern on your arms before you even get into your back area. So you're going to start with your horizontal pieces and shoe glue these down. Make sure that you don't have like weird spots in the middle where you've placed shoe glue. You want to make sure that your pattern lines up correctly and it's got all the same spacing. So all you do is, you're going to put your vertical pieces in. Make sure that it's stuck down real good with plenty of shoe glue. You don't want this stuff coming loose later, especially when you're out in the field and need it to be working good for you. And spread this around. And after you get your pattern on your arms, do both sides, then we're going to start doing the vertical pieces. Now you can do this in either a 3 grid layout or a 4, just kind of depending on how much camo you want on your arms. I actually prefer a little bit less jute and things like that on my arms, because typically that's something that's going to get hung up. Alright, so after you get your grid pattern laid out on your arms, then we're going to move on to the back section. And the trick with the back is we're essentially going to take a long piece of paracord, and we are going to follow the pattern that we created here, and then we're going to stretch the paracord down to maybe 1 inch, 2 inches above where the bottom part of your BDU is, and you're going to shoe glue this just like you did the rest, and you're going to come up here and conform your way over the top. And we cut this long because we want to have overlap. We're essentially going to create a grid pattern on the front of this also, so that we can have a little bit of jute on the top part of our chest area. So cut this a little bit long. Make sure you're pulling your innards out and burning your ends off on your paracord. You don't need the innards, so pull those out, and make sure that your side runs are at least like a foot of overhang over the top here. And then when we get to these sections closer to the middle, we're going to take these pieces and kind of conform them around the neck so that the jute builds up right around this area. Because our silhouette is extremely important. One of the reasons we use a ghillie suit is to camouflage our silhouette. It's you know, one of the biggest things in stalking and camo is your silhouette will give you away. So anything that you can do to camouflage that is going to help greatly. All right, so we got our arm patterns done. And basically what you're going to do is start on your vertical runs. And it's real important to kind of follow the seams right around this area. You don't want to go past the seams, because the way this burlap works is you'll have 6 to 8 inch strips that are going to overhang so that when you lay down you'll disappear. So get your vertical runs and make sure that you've got some overlap, you know, that hangs over the shoulders. And then now we're going to start doing our horizontal runs, and you really want to try to make sure that it's symmetrical. You might even want to pre-cut all this stuff and lay it out so that your design looks good when you're done with it. So cut your strips and then shoe glue these all the way across from here to here. So this stuff seems to be a little bit better than shoe goo. E6000 seems to be a little bit runnier and easier to work with. So I think this might actually be a better product. We just had one of the students bring this to a class, so you might want to try this instead of regular shoe goo. You can pick it up at arts and crafts stores and Hobby Lobbies, stuff like that. Alright, so here's the back, the grid pattern completed. Like I stated before, you want to have some string that has some overlap, and we're going to basically conform these around the neck area and create a grid pattern that goes right up to, you know, where your front pockets would be. You don't need a whole lot of camo on the front. The only thing that's going to do is anytime you're doing any kind of low crawling or, you know, sneaking up, it's just going to be catching on things and dragging under you when you're kind of worming your way across a field or whatever. So we don't like too much frontal coverage. We can do camo, you know, camo that specifically using spray paint and other methods. But finish to the back pattern, and then now we're going to flip this over and run our grid on the front. Alright, so now we're going to do the pants, and there's a lot of different ways that you can do the pants, guys. Some people even like to turn their uniforms inside out, their tops and stuff like that. I don't like that. I like to utilize the pockets. A lot of guys will say that it gets hung up and things like that. I really have never had issues with that, so I like to utilize the pockets on all my equipment, because there's things like you want to carry like landscape clippers and little saws and things like that, so that when you're low crawling through the you know, on the ground, and you come up to an area where, you know, there's something in your way and it's not as easy, it's easier to just cut it down and set it to the side than it is to try to go around. You know, you like to have clippers and little saws and things like that on you. But for the pants, basically it's the exact same concept. We are going to take a horizontal run from seam to seam and start it right under the back pants pocket right here, and we're basically going to go around the outside of the pocket and create a grid pattern from seam to seam all the way down except where the BDU side pockets are.
looked rough while I was down there close to it, but it don't look bad from far away.
Spread that down a little bit.
This go down?
Yeah.
Because we're wanting to come right across here too, right?
Yeah. So the first step, or the first process, is to basically lay out a grid pattern right below where the butt pockets would be. And you can either do that with 2 or 3 strands, depending on how tight you want your grid. And the next stage is to run our vertical pieces here. But when we do them for this part of the pant leg, right in here, we're basically going to take a piece that will run all the way down, and then we're going to come back over and create another grid pattern that runs beside the pockets. For here, I typically like to make a glue point on both sides of this. This one was done in the middle, that's fine. But when you make a glue point on both sides, that allows you to run down the seam of both legs to the inside. So you're going to take this cord and run it and glue it close to these side seams on both sides. Alright, so here's the finished product on the bottoms. It's real simple. I mean, there's no rocket science to this. Just make sure that you have a fairly consistent and symmetrical grid pattern. Burn off all your ends, and make sure you glue the crap out of it. This stuff is shoe glue, or this other stuff that we've been using, this E6000. We've actually found this in Walmart, and it's actually a little bit cheaper than the shoe glue, and I've been using shoe glue for years, and I think this stuff's actually better. So we're going to start switching over to it in our classes. It's a little bit more manageable. But just make sure you put plenty of it on there, and because you want this to last, obviously. And you know, if you don't put enough glue on there, sometimes you know, certain sections of the cord might, you know, disconnect when you're low crawling or something like that. So get plenty on there. So after you get your pants completed and before you put on your burlap, what we're going to do is go ahead and treat these for bugs. And the main product that I use for bug treatment when out in the woods is permethrin. I don't like DEET at all. DEET has very short effectiveness. It's only good for a few hours, and it only repels, whereas permethrin kills. This, if done properly, and there's a lot of ways, and I'll do an entire video on dealing with bugs and sprays and things like that. But this is good for about 30 washes in the dry, or in the washer after it's applied, and it is just so much better than DEET. It's ridiculous. And when you're crawling through the woods and you're doing stalks and things like that, bugs are going to be of huge concern. In fact, if you read Carlos's Hathcock books about you know, his Marine Corps sniping adventures over in Vietnam, one of the missions he talks about, he was actually more afraid of dying from ant and bug bites than he was from the Viet Cong. So, you know, when you're crawling through the grass, you really need this stuff. Basically, you just spray it on. It's very simple. First, and you want to put on a pretty good amount. And probably my favorite way of doing this is to get a 5-gallon bucket and basically just dump 1 or 2 of these in there, and you can pick these up at Walmart for about 10 bucks. And I'll just dump it in a 5-gallon bucket and dilute it with a little bit of water, and then I'll just take my uniforms or my suits and throw them in there for 24 hours and let it soak, and then pull it out and let it air dry. We're going to spray this permethrin on every section, especially real heavily around the areas that they're going to get in, the waistline and around the ankles. And you're going to treat both your tops and bottoms, put a lot of this stuff on, and I promise you're going to thank me for all the bug protection that this is going to add to your suit when you're sneaking around.